Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we all call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone. Okie doke. Now, I want to introduce my guest tonight, who I am so thrilled and flattered that she is here to share the evening with me. I can't tell you. She's probably one of the wisest women I have ever met. She has been through the fire and she's survived it all, come out wiser and smarter and full of all sorts of amazing material that is just amazing. Tonight we welcome Solaris BlueRaven to Nightlight. She's a published author, public speaker, timeline astrologer, MT healer, remote viewer, clairvoyant, and an assessment specialist in psychotronic warfare, synthetic telepathy, and covert technology. She's a world-class natural psychic and a cosmic advisor, and has been a test pilot for covert technology, drawing from a professional background in surveillance. She investigates global anomalies in addition to her current research. She's a professional writer with three amazing books out there. All of them I highly recommend. They're terrific. My favorite is Transmutation through Ascension, Soul of the Sun. And they can all actually be purchased from Amazon or at Author Books. And she also is a co-host here on Freedom Slips Radio. And her show is called Raven Star's Witching Hour, and that's on Saturday nights at midnight. And you can find her, at least one of her websites, at www.nightshadowanomalydetectives.com. String it all together. It's really hard to read. So, welcome to the show, Solaris.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I'm so happy to be here. And thank you for those kind words, by the way. Likewise, I have a great deal of respect for you. So thank you.
Well, every time I talk to you, I learn a ton. And I keep forgetting that we're supposed to be, talking and giving people information, and find that I am pumping you as dry as I can about the information that enlightens me. You like we both feel the energy that's going around, and certainly the energy of the world, the consciousness that we're living in, it's constantly expanding, but the people are beginning to feel that expansion. And I get so many people saying, I don't know if I should be with you or a shrink. And every now and then I said there's not much difference, but it does feel as though people are feeling the shifts and they don't know what to do with them. Are you getting people coming to you with that same sort of problem?
I am. I get a lot of people that come to me with a lot of night terrors. They're having a hard time processing information. I think that they're just completely overwhelmed, first of all, by the energy here in the linear world, and then the three-dimensional, multidimensional, and then, of course, all the light that's descending onto the world. That's bringing up any issues they have at the conscious, subconscious level. So if they need to clear, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but if they need to clear anything, it's going to surface, it's going to bubble up. So they're dealing with a lot of issues on an energetic scale that go down probably to the cellular level of their psyche, which they need to deal with. And once again, as you look and you see the mainstream propaganda, and I don't have to tell everybody that, it's all over the map, and it's poison, it's a toxin. So what I'm seeing is a need to detox completely from the system itself, from the linear world of false matrices.
Yeah, that makes a great deal of sense. And I have people who are now saying, "Oh, I'm on a spiritual pathway." And I kind of say, that's great. Well, and they say, but I'm on a spiritual pathway and I don't understand why things aren't working for me. And then I get to the point where I say, well, they say they've read a lot of books, they've taken a lot of classes, they've done all sorts of stuff like that. And my question to them is, well, that's great. So you have all this knowledge, but how are you living? Are you living it? Are you walking your talk? And they
Mm-hmm.
give me blank stares. And it blows me away. And what I'm hitting my head up against with a lot of these people is that while they have this consciousness expansion going on inside of them, and I'm not saying everybody is, has kundalini rising and they're flaking out, but I am saying that their awareness is expanding tremendously. And in talking to them about the journey that they're on, I'm finding I'm hitting my head up against time and time again of the conditioning that they've had as far as religion and spirit and soul, and they can't seem to hop over that into the new paradigms that go beyond religion.
I agree. It's their programming. It's totally entrainment. And that's why they have to deprogram from what I call the false matrix. And also their lifestyles. It's really a byproduct of their belief systems, what they've been taught in school, how they believe from day to day, or what they participate with. And it's all about, as you know, taking your power back. And you take your power back by your divine right, and embracing your higher self, what I call higher self, oversoul, superconscious. But it does take work. You have to go through layers and layers and layers of peeling away traumas, emotional trauma, mental trauma, physical trauma. Subtle energy needs to be cleared out. I mean, I know I'm telling you stuff that you know and you are a teacher in, but a lot of people don't understand the process, and you go through many levels of that process until you get an awakening of where I call the light body really becomes activated. And from that point on, you get more wisdom and enlightenment, and everything seems to be more in alignment with what I call multiversal consciousness or universal law, to a point where there's no drama. So I think it's a reminder that people do need to take their power back. I don't think they understand how to, Barbara. I think a lot of the time they're like little children, and because they've been so entrained and maybe they didn't have good role models, they just kind of fall on the side there and looking and seeking for someone to just wipe away all the trauma and wipe it all away for them.
Well, and sometimes they think that because they are becoming more spiritually aware, that they don't have to deal with the things in the past. They are just going on, they're stepping up to 3 or 4 cloud levels so that they are above the other stuff and they don't have to deal with it.
Right. And that's why yeah, go ahead.
No, and that's where I see them stumbling, and I'm not saying that I'm not in this bunch too, because of course, the more aware we become, the more we realize we are totally, absolutely responsible for everything that's going on in our life. It's our perception that has created it.
Absolutely, it's a construct, and this is why, well, where I come from, it's the holographic design work, because we manifest as we want. We choose to manifest a reality through consciousness, and of course we're dealing with a matrix here, so we have to navigate beyond that. But I don't think a lot of people do know how to do that. But you're right, people need to go into their own inner, well, I don't want to call it an inner demon, but whatever it is, the shadow self, and process their history, process their past. And anything they need to clear out really should be cleared, because there's no such thing as the illusion of time and space. You can just go in and clear what needs to be cleared. So that does need to be dealt with. And actually, in order to go through other levels of consciousness and light body, you have to clear those things. Otherwise, they're just going to keep resurfacing and recycling through relationships or through something else. And I've seen that pattern. I've seen people come to me and the same pattern keeps cycling through. It's like a carousel ride. And because they haven't learned to process and clear the initial program that was running for that.
Oh, absolutely. It just, to me, it's such an amazing journey. But the one thing that I find people look at me like I'm saying something so stupid when I say it. I tell everybody we all have a master within us. We all bring a fully ascended master into this incarnation, and that our body is just the vehicle that master is traveling in for this lifetime. And when I get to that point where I'm saying you have it all inside of yourself, you're the best teacher of yourself, you're the best one to make that connection and to get the wisdom from the ancients through that part of you that has gone through time. They just can't hold on to it. I don't, sometimes it's like, I don't have a master teacher inside of me. Look at all of the messes. Look at the messes that I've gone through, and in reality, you asked for that because you needed it to evolve and to more fully facet more fully polished some of the facets of this particular body that is radiating that energy out into this reality.
Yes, you're 100% accurate. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people have self-esteem issues. In other words, they feel disempowered for whatever reason. Maybe it was school or their parents or a relationship of some kind. So they don't believe in the ascended master consciousness. But I know the higher self, oversoul, superconscious, the higher self is an ascended master. And yet people don't realize that cosmic Christ design, if you want to call it, that truly is empowered. We have the capabilities to do, and I know I'm preaching to the choir when I talk to you because you know all this, but literally to do anything through consciousness as an avatar. But most people aren't awakened to that level. And this, once again, it's a process, but it's kind of interesting because there's so many levels of people here in the illusion of space and time. Some people are awake, some people are being slept, some people are just starting to get what's going on. And then some of us who have done the work since before we showed up on the timeline or the planet in the illusion are here as, I guess, teachers or beacons to enlighten them and show them a path.
Well, and I'm finding that the movies are more or less. I've always thought, I've always believed, especially the good science fiction ones, that the movies were really sort of getting the general population used to the reality of our existence on the Earth plane. And you mentioned one, that's Avatar. Interstellar is another one that basically came brought out that fact. We are who we've been waiting for. The body is just an avatar. It's just a vehicle. It's, I think in one of your books you compare the body to a spacesuit.
Yep, I did.
And it's a matter of, okay, the soul, the spirit, the consciousness rides in this particular vehicle. But and I keep getting thrown back to, and at some point in time, I'm going to have to actually sit down and write the damn book that I've been talking about for the last 10 years. But to the Emerald Tablets, to how the soul, the spirit is basically described as an etheric energy field. And that's what our spirit actually is, and it travels through time and space, or, well, there is no time, but it travels through space and times maybe, or dimensions, but when it's drawn to a place that it wants to experience, it has to manifest. In order to experience a physical plane, it has to have a physical body, and it assimilates, or it creates one that is indigenous to that particular plane, time, planet, whatever. And I've had people look at me like I was totally crazy. I've said, you could have been a green blob someplace. You could have been. Well,
it's true. No, you're spot on. You're spot on with everything. And that's really nice to hear your wisdom and your enlightenment. And of course, that comes from somebody, a being who's been around on and off planet multiple times, I'm sure. But yeah, that's exactly accurate, 100%. I totally resonate with that.
So what do we do with humanity here?
Oh,
and
gosh.
I'm not saying I'm above it. I'm obviously traveling right along with the crowd, but the reality here is everybody has a calling. And nobody really knows what that calling is. They just, follow along with the flow, where the energy takes us. And, by profession, I am a teacher. I taught special ed for 25 years. So my format, my platform has always been that of a teacher. And yet, this material that you wrote that I so resonated with, I'm going to steal it all and do a class on it.
Oh, cool. Well, feel free.
I trust me, I do. I have a class for spiritual development, and I'm going to follow you chapter and verse all the way through the whole program, because you so beautifully, and for anybody out there who is listening, who really wants to have some sort of a checkpoint, a checklist to kind of, am I on the pathway? How do I do this? What's going on? Solaris has written, you wrote it in 2004 and it was inspired then. It's even more inspired now because I think more people are going to be aware of the things that you've gone into. Chapters are short, they're easy to understand. You can read a chapter, sit back and meditate on it and kind of go, oh, wow, how about that?
It's
It's
wonderful.
insightful, it's wonderful, it's inspiring, and you write it in a way so that you know you're not nobody could possibly feel that they were being looked down upon. It's you have given them a checklist to look at and to say, do I feel this? Do I feel this? Do I feel this? Is this what this means to me? It's magnificently written, and it's a terrific guidebook. I would, if I weren't teaching a class, I'd just give it out to everybody and say, read the book. You don't need a class.
You are so sweet. I want to thank you so much for that. That you don't know how much that means to me, because that's the book I wrote that pulled me into a very dark program, and I always
Mhm.
wondered why that book triggered them so badly. So I want to thank you very much for saying that, and that just means everything to me. That's
No,
who I am. That's me in there, and so I want
oh,
to remember
it's
that.
absolutely you. And what I love about it is you start with who are we? And that's really, it's a great place to start.
Hmm.
And most people will say, well, I'm a human on the earth plane, yada yada. And you go in to point out that we're not human. Um, we're a spirit who is traveling this earth plane this lifetime, but that's not who we are. And
Exactly.
most people identify their ego and their personality identify as a form, and that locks them so, in my opinion, that locks them so strongly into the physicality of the reality that the spirit can't soar.
Exactly. Yep, that's part of the entrainment programming too, and that's why it's really about. You're right. It's the ego, and it's this whole thing where they're disempowering themselves and not really syncing up with what I call the multiverse and their beautiful celestial design work, which is constantly staring us everywhere. We look into the stars. We look everywhere. It's here. I don't have to tell you that, but yeah.
No, that's what amazes me, that people who claim to be on a spiritual journey, first of all, don't even recognize that that I often explain um, this lifetime very much like similarly when we were growing up, and every winter we got a new winter coat because we've outgrown the other one, or it didn't survive the year or whatever. And that's what the spirit does. Each lifetime, each time they come back, it's a different coat. And
Hmm.
when you get to the other side, you take a look at your closet that has to be by now 50 million miles long, and there are all these different coats that you've worn throughout time. Some of them you can identify because they were human form, and some that just look like green blobs or whatever. But your spirit has worn a lot of coats, and your personality, that's only for this lifetime. You don't take the personality with you when you go. And people who come to me and say, well, this is my last incarnation. I'm finished after this incarnation and I'm not coming back. And I used to argue with them, and now I just tell them that they're absolutely right, that the personality and the sexuality of who they are right now will never come back again. The spirit may have other thoughts, however.
Hmm. Yep, and other sectors in the universe too. I can't forget that one.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Now, in your experience, do you find that a great deal of time is spent on each plane, or do spirits kind of flip around, or dimension, whatever you want to call it?
Well, I'm a multidimensional being. When I think about my multidimensional states of consciousness, it seems to me like everything is simultaneously synced up. So I don't see a separation in any one-dimensional space, at least for now. When I have interaction with any species, like in the past, it's always been a specific frequency band of energy and a signature that was always connected in with my field. But for now, I see everything as simultaneous. So what I also see is turbulence around us, and not just me, but turbulence insofar as just everything we're here to navigate in. It's kind of like we're in a sea of very stormy weather. We used to call it like the Kali Rift because it feels like a rifting effect. So a lot of
Yeah.
that, I think, is a disruption. I think there's some interference, not just for myself, but I think a lot of people are getting interference, and we have to be very, very clear on what we're receiving through transmissions. I hope that answered your question, but that's the interpolation I got from it.
Yeah, no, it does. It's just, and I feel that so many people don't understand also, and this you brought out in your book brilliantly. You know, I'm a fan, let me tell you.
Well, I want to say thank you. I'm honored because I have the ultimate respect for you, Barbara. So for you to say that, that means a great deal to me, big time. So thank you.
What, that I'm going to steal it all?
Oh, I don't care. You know what? You're a teacher's teacher. Hey, share. Really, seriously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's amazing. But what the other part that I so many people don't understand is that the planet has a consciousness as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
And it's being
it's
tortured right now. I mean, there's a lot going on here with the terraforming and other things. So
yeah, but you know, it's probably it survived a lot worse than you know humanity has done to it in the past. So,
very true.
um, it feels to me as though it's kind of like um, every now and then I look upon us as fleas on an animal, and you know every now and then the earth shakes like crazy and gets rid of the things that are most irritating,
Hmm.
and it probably does. I sometimes though look upon the earth as a spaceship, and I think you did bring that out too, that this is the planet is traveling through space,
Hmm.
and
Absolutely.
and so you know all of our puny efforts at sending rocket ships up and things, and I have never bought the idea that we will ever travel through space in a rocket ship. That just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Hmm. That's because you're an advanced species. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like, you know, how many cans of beans can you pack? um it's sort of to me the concept of it's so locked into the physical, and travel into other dimensions and to other planes just can't be done in the heavy physical form that we now have. It
Hmm.
doesn't make sense.
That's why the light body in Merkaba is so significant. And that's why, and even when they talk about taking ET home, it's really about consciousness in motion. It's about the consciousness. And we can change our vibratory rate. We can change our molecular structure. We can phase shift and bilocate and all these wonderful gifts. And once again, the avatar does come in because it's a gift of the avatar if we were to up at that higher frequency band. But right now, everybody's vibrating in a very, what I call a coarse frequency to a point where there's too much density, but that's dropping too. But you're seeing
Hmm.
it. This is what amazes me, Barbara. I get so bored because I see everything going backwards sometimes here, insofar as even behavioral patterns.
Hmm. Well,
So,
you know, I think that when things like that happen, it's that people are trying to cling to something that they feel comfortable with, as opposed to saying, well, there's something new, let me try this one on. You know, it's kind of like, why not give something a chance? Why not be open to a different philosophy or a different way of looking at things? And I'm not saying we should all you know, radically change, but I think we should all absolutely embrace everything that's out there instead of trying to make things so structured for ourselves and our families, because that restricts everything so greatly. It's
it
just
does.
frightening.
It is. Well, I think that has a lot to do with just it can go down from governments, religions, constructs of energy, constructs of belief systems that are confining the soul and the spirit from its own process of evolution. I mean, that's happening. There's no doubt about that. But I think you're right. And a lot of the time it's about fear. People are afraid of moving forward. People hold a lot of fear in their energy fields. They just don't want to. They're afraid. They're afraid of failure, afraid of success. I hear this all the time. And really, it's about letting go and letting, as we know, spirit guide us at the higher levels, just letting that energetic just interface with us and guide us where we need to be, because that's where it's going to be the right place in the illusion of space and time. But I see
But that,
conflict there. Well, go ahead.
yeah, but that goes back, I mean, that goes way back, because originally, you know, survival was important, and in order to survive, certain things were required of us.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Right.
and so, the fear-based stuff started out as survival, but it no longer is that. And when I see, especially I see but people between the 20s and 30s these days are coming up with, bipolar. And frankly, I think bipolar is something, doctors invented just to,
Hmm.
just instead of saying they have their wiring off a little bit. But it feels to me as though there is such inner conflict in these people that are being diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And you can see, from my standpoint as a teacher, you can see how their thinking is different.
Where'd you go? Can you hear me?
Barbara, you there?
Just dropped off.
I see her. Do you see her?
I see her. I just can't hear her. It's like her
She,
sound
oh,
went.
now she's bubbling. Let me just hang her up and pull her back in.
Okay.
Let's see if that doesn't work. Often that's the fastest fix.
It's probably her energy field. It's that psychic energy blowing out the electricity in it.
Well be. Let's see. No, she's got 3 Skypes going. I didn't knock her out of the call. Let me just write her a little note here. I don't like to see her go yellow like that, because if then it's hard. But I'll try. Let me see what happens. No. Now it should come back. It shouldn't be on hold because I've dropped it. Now what I want to do is let me get it out of the old call. Sometimes that can help. Remove from group. Remove from group. Grr. Let's see. Let's see if I can't.
Can't you just drag her in?
Yeah, I want to get Studio B up.
Oh, okay. Aren't we up? It looks like we're live.
You need to end this call before you can start a new one. Well, that's what I don't want to do. I'm going to have to call you back again. Well, no, okay, we're good. We're on the air, actually.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, okay. Now, I just need to get Barbara back, and I need to tell her, except I don't think she's in this call anymore. Barbara, if you can hear me, call me back, please. You're showing brown. I need you to show green. You may have 1 or 2 too many Skypes running. If you just have one going either on your phone or your main machine. Because I tried to call you and it made me put the server on hold, and I do not want to do that again. And yes, I've looked at your 2 books, Solaris, and Amazon. I just haven't had the money to grab any of them, though.
Oh, that's okay. If I had extra copies, I'd give you some. I don't have any at the house right now.
That's very sweet, and I appreciate that. I'll get some as soon as I can.
Oh, that's fine. I don't know what they charge for the downloads. They might be inexpensive, but
maybe
I do need to order some more copies, though.
Yeah, I'm out of credit card. I used to have a credit card, but my
smart
fortunes have turned these days, and
there's nothing wrong with that. Like the less debt you have on that, probably the better.
Well, actually, there is some debt. Just get out of it. It's just a thing. Let's see. I'm in. Let me get to Barbara's main page.
You can't just drag her in, huh?
I can try. Let me.
I think you can. That's what I would do.
Okay, I'll give it a try. She's still showing brown, but let's see what happens. Let's see if we can get her to go green.
Does she have a house line you can call besides Skype?
No, all I have is Skype.
Okay.
Unfortunately, wait, I do have a message, so.
Well, she's bubbling.
Yeah, I'm writing to her now in her own window. Okay, I just left a message that she can read. And
well, I just let it bubble until it clears, right?
Yeah, it might. Yeah, we can try that and see. Oh, and I'm so glad that you got back safely to your own house from the.
Thank you. I appreciate your sweet thoughts, by the way. I know you were saying nice things and good thoughts my way, and thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty creepy to go through that ordeal. So.
I bet it is.
Something I've never had to deal with before. So.
Well, hopefully no more.
Yeah, exactly.
Living in the woods, that's always a possibility, I guess. But.
Yeah, it's the price you pay for living up in near national forests.
Yeah, yeah. But why not? What?
Well, yeah, I like it better than living around the, regular town. There she is.
I back.
There
Did you
you.
blow the line or what?
I guess so. It's a conspiracy. Patrick always used to say I was one to cause conspiracies.
It's that psychic energy.
Now I lost all of you. I lost everything. It all went blank. Am I
Wow.
the only one that lost it?
Yeah, I was still here.
I was still here too. You just dropped off. I was thinking you might have too many Skypes going on. If you've got Skype on 3 different units, if it were like only on your phone or only on your computer, that should be sufficient. And I don't know. It's just a thought. But yeah, you just went away and I couldn't get you back. I tried to call you back, but oops, there she's going again.
Oh, you're back now. Oh, no, she's not.
Yeah, right. We had her for a second, and perhaps she's adjusting something.
That's just weird.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have this problem often?
Well, not often, but not so seldom that I'm freaked out about it.
Because
I'm used to handling it. I'm used to. It's just when I tried to call her back instead of adding to call. Thank you.
that's her house number right there.
Yeah, it's the only thing is, if I try and call that, that'll make calls.
I'm back. I'm back.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Right.
I'm going to go on mute and let you to.
Well, let's hope you don't fall off the line there again.
First time that's ever happened to me. Like it's,
Wow.
it doesn't fall. I don't fall off the line when I have somebody that I'm struggling to get to talk. But when I have somebody that can talk, holy mackerel, that's insulting. So anyhow, I was talking about Twilight Zone. Yeah,
Twilight
bipolar.
Zone.
Yeah, and in there were some Twilight Zones where the people that were the normal ones were the ugly ones, and the people who were shunned because they didn't conform were the beautiful ones. And I'm wondering if bipolar people have that consciousness that I've noticed that they think differently, they're wired differently, and they solve problems differently. And as far as I'm concerned, a lot of the you have a couple of symptoms that would suggest that somebody was in an ascension flow of energy or wave of energy, and many bipolar people exhibit those kind of symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So, are they possibly before their time? And humanity is, that we are so stuck in our physicality that we can't understand that if somebody is different, it doesn't make them bad. It just makes them unique. And those are the people you want to get to know.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think as people start ascending through consciousness, when they're starting to be on the path of spirit, when they start to activate, all of these, what I call the soul extensions, start to activate with them, which is them as their personality traits on a multidimensional scale. I know it sounds really complex, but yeah, you can download aspects of your higher self, but also your soul extension, which actually has a different persona and a different personality, which is more enlightened. So there would be a little bit of conflict to some degree. There's also, I never discount the covert technologies because I do know that they deploy through mind control programming a lot of the heterodyning, which creates an imbalance at the hemisphere level because they're doing a neural interface where they're creating an engineered and basically an electronic brain interface with a separate personality. So they'll overlay somebody's personality with a separate personality for programming, and that's another animal altogether, Barbara. That's the dark side of technology. But I think that on a multidimensional scale, I mean, think about all the lifetimes we've had, whether it's on and off planet, we always at the cellular level store that data. So we could have aspects of all of our abilities and all of who we were throughout the illusion of space and time integrated in, and they could be activated. So that creates a lot. I'm sure that some people probably aren't prepared to handle that state of consciousness. I do know when I started receiving more and more initiations back in the day, and this was before we had internet, I mean, I was just like a whole new personality took over, and it wasn't like a personality like what you would think is mind control, but more of enlightenment. It was like the Holy Spirit. It was divine light. It was divine presence. It was phenomenal. And I'm sure you can relate to that. So that was a long-winded answer.
I've had ringing in my ears for as long as I can remember. And I've always I've always embraced it, and you know, it's not something that I want to have quote unquote cured, because it's a part of me. And I swear to you, I just think it's because I hear at a different frequency, and and in some ways, especially if I'm seeing spirit, I see in a different frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, this is, I was going to go in this direction too, because I really believe that our DNA has everything encoded in it, just everything from the beginning of the time that we were a single cell. And that you know, there's only really one pair of the DNA that is really fully functional, and the rest of them, you know, scientists tend to call, you know, junk DNA and stuff like that. But that's where the magic is stored. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, if we were able to sort of unlock that, and I guess part of that is letting go of the fear, and then allowing other aspects to come into our lives that enable us to do other things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And also with that activation, with that what they call junk DNA, and that infuriates me. I think I even quoted that in my book. But yeah, it's literally about frequency. Once again, it's about raising states of consciousness and doing the internal, what I call spiritual work, to activate. Because once you start doing spiritual work and you start decoding yourself, your vibratory rate changes, your consciousness changes, you get synced up with the multiverse, you get synced up with the full light universe, and then all of that DNA starts activating, and that's phenomenal. That's powerful.
It can be overwhelming too, I would
Mhm.
think.
Right, absolutely. Just like Kundalini, when some people have premature awakenings, it's very uncomfortable. It can cause an imbalance unless we know how to run the energy. And I know you do, and I know I do, but some people don't. And of course, that can cause some problems.
Yeah, and you did in your book, and I keep going back to it because I really really enjoyed it.
I'm
Um,
so glad.
you talk about learning how to work with energy, and you bring up Reiki, and Reiki is something that is becoming more and more and more. You know, everybody's a Reiki master these days,
Hmm.
and
Right.
and it's amazing, because you know, this is a tool that 30 years ago, people would, you know, kind of poo-poo it or frown on it, or just tell you were nuts in doing so. And now people are learning how to utilize the energy,
Hmm.
and the attunements with the different levels, I think are just amazing.
Oh, they are. You know, it's really interesting. And this was before the internet and computers when I had my initiations, but I didn't go to like a lot of people. I had a very powerful master teacher with a true Yusui system, and it was incredible. I remember the day I was just, when I was first initiated into even just like first and second, it was weird because I'd start to see mist around everywhere. I mean, I was so activated through that. And I really encourage people, if you're not initiated into Reiki, that would be a really good system to work with. Of course, nowadays you have to be careful because we don't know what kind of teachers are out there. And I don't say that with any disrespect, but you have to really pick your teachers with wisdom, because I had a great teacher with a real lineage. I can't say that for everybody out there now. So I don't know
Mhm.
about you, Barbara, but you know, we do have to pick and choose, and you have to use a lot of wisdom and your intuition.
Oh gosh, I totally agree. And I think that one good way of discovering whether somebody has the energy and knows how to use it is to experience, you know, get a session with
Hmm.
them, and see if you feel the energy, see if it makes a difference in your body, because a really good Reiki practitioner can literally give you chills and stand the hairs up on the back of your neck.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And even the distant healing is really powerful. I used to do a lot of distant work, and boy, it was amazing. They'd be in other states around the world and they'd feel it. So no such thing as time and distance, right? It's really
No,
nice.
absolutely not. I
Yeah.
mean, I actually took the Reiki because I wanted the attunements. And it wasn't so much that I was going to actually be a practitioner, but the attunements did unlock doors inside of me that enabled me to do, you know, even more fun things than I had done before.
Hmm. Yep,
And
absolutely.
but one of the thing, and I promised the teacher that taught, you know, I went through the entire coursework, but I promised her I would never practice it, because frankly, I kept thinking of different ways things could be done that would be more effective, and you know, she kept trying to give people a structure to work in, and 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 it was appropriate for what she was doing, but and I kept thinking, you know, okay, so if you can see or feel a blockage of some sort or an issue in some part of a person's body had to do with a past life. What symbol would you use? And, she said, she finally came up with the distant symbol and stuff like that. But to me, it's wonderful if you can take it into your system and take the wisdom you get from it into yourself, make it your own, and then utilize it. I wrote someplace you can either be a prophet or a parrot.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
And you can quote chapter and verse and not know what's going on, or you can incorporate that material into that which and who you are, and expand upon it, and then share that wisdom.
That's so true, because, like martial arts was my background, but it's about really embracing all styles. And when you start, with me, when I first received initiation and became a master teacher, I started evolving and growing, doing multiple initiations and just keeping on the path of spirit, doing the real work. And to a point where everything was shifting, to a point where I started doing light master surgery. I started doing things. I literally took my own multidimensional design and integrated it in my own healing system. So yeah, but Reiki's a good starting point. There's no doubt. And it's funny when you say the symbols, because the symbols are nice and it is a powerful system, but you transcend it and you use it, as you said, with your own energetic signature. And that means your energetic, spiritual, celestial signature, which is huge. It's vast. It's unlimited.
Yeah, and we are all ultimately, very unique. While we may be similar, we are not the same as. And so that uniqueness, our experience over the passage of our soul through dimension and stuff like that, it's important for us to create something that is our own, as opposed to copying somebody else.
I so agree. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you start your own school of anything, but or you could, I guess, but it's kind of like people, say, how did you get to where you are? And I tell them, I could map it out for you. You could follow it verbatim, but you wouldn't end up where I am today.
Very true.
Everybody has their own pathway. You mentioned harmonics, and I wanted to ask you, we have 2 casinos in Connecticut. And I visited both of them in the same day with my sister and brother-in-law, because I'd never been to a casino when I was old enough to actually gamble. Went to Reno, Nevada when my mother got a divorce, but we weren't allowed in. And I found something very disturbing, and I noticed, and it was either, well, nobody else heard it, but I did. There was a harmonic that was being played constantly. And I asked my sister and her husband, and they didn't hear it, but I did. And it was like a hum. It was almost like it was hypnotic, maybe. I mean, do places like casinos use stuff like that to keep people placid? Or you're the only person that I can think of that I could ask about that, because are there harmonics played in places so that people become almost hypnotized by what they're doing and they don't, get out and have a life?
I would say, depending on the location, I know the casinos I've worked in, I know that they use a specific kind of carpeting to create a kind of a disorientation. I've been told that. I think that there is, just by the energetic signature of some of the machines and all that electricity that's just blasting away, it will probably create some kind of a low, not to ultra low frequency to some degree, which I suspect would put people in a trance of some kind, because it's like playing a video game 24 hours a day. I don't think it's like one of those covert mind control programs, but I do think it's just one of those things where it's easy to get manipulated, because you're already getting lulled as soon as you walk into the casino between the bright lights, the machines pinging around, and then of course they play their own music, and then the busyness of it all, because that busyness, it just puts people in this really strange space, in my opinion anyway. That's what I've observed through the surveillance. So I hope that answers your question. But there is the ultra low frequency, as we know, what they call that hum that you use and covertly use, and of course that can create a lot of disturbances. A lot of people have miserable lives when they tune into those frequencies, and it's very hard for them to sleep and all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah, and I couldn't wait to get out of there. And it was like, I kept saying, you don't hear that?
You have special hearing, though. You're one of those really powerful psychics. So, and you hear on multi-layers. So I'm sure you hear what we call the geometric light languages and the frequencies of the cosmos. I'm sure you download all sorts of cosmic celestial frequencies into your design work, and I'm sure that's where half of your data or most of your data comes from, is that aspect of you. So, and that's the part of who we really are. That's what we're supposed to be plugging into, are the higher overtones of those frequencies, that geometric light language, instead of the stuff that they're broadcasting here, which is nothing but dirty electricity and mind control programming. And unfortunately, I got pulled into that. And I have to tell you, Robin, I mean, when I say Robin, somebody must be thinking of me. It might be Robin. Hi, Robin. But anyways, what's beautiful about this conversation is it's nice to be able to talk about this, because this is who I am. And I've been forced to talk about the other stuff, because of all the stuff I've been through with the covert technologies. But it's so refreshing to talk about this truth, the multidimensional design, Ascension, because this is really what it's about. And this is also why they're doing what they're doing, because in my opinion, there are certain forces that truly don't want that expansion in consciousness.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I was so focused on the ascension process, because I see people breaking out. I see them, emerging from patterns that have kept them in a single place, and they're looking for direction. And that's why I was so tickled with your book, because it does give you sort of a framework, and you give people the bones, and they're able to hang the material on it as they gather it. But without the skeleton, they have nothing to hang the material on.
That's so true. And that's one thing I do see more and more, is that it's hard to find the teacher's teacher. It's hard to find beings, and I don't say this with any arrogance at all. I'm just saying it's hard to find beings like us, who are out there with real powerful data that will help them empower themselves, so that they're able to navigate through this this maelstrom that's here right now, and the illusion of there's a lot of chaotic energy here. So it's good to have a benchmark of some kind.
Oh, God, yeah. And there really actually isn't one. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I did a spiritual development circle online, thinking, I wanted to be able to talk to other practitioners, and had like 60 people sign up from all around the world. And when I got them all together, I thought, because I couldn't find a spiritual development group. So I thought, well, I tell people, if you can't find what you want, make it happen. So I did. And I was so excited until I realized that while, yes, there were 60 people there, and half of them, at least, if not more, were practitioners, none of them understood the universal laws. They didn't understand the foundations. They didn't understand walking their talk. They didn't. And it horrified me.
Wow, I can imagine.
And I ended up, instead of having a discussion group, I ended up for 15 weeks lecturing.
Good for you.
and it was like, I tried to drag people in, and nobody got dragged in. So I went through, some of the foundational stuff that I thought was important for everybody to learn. And then I thought, I even gave them all of my notes. I gave them all of the notes that I had gathered together that I lectured from. They all got a copy of them. Sometimes it was 100 pages or whatever, so that they would have material to read and then bring it to the discussion group. And even then, I couldn't get anybody to talk. So it said to me, okay, this isn't a platform for me. So I've found other platforms since then. But you kind of want to be challenged. If you don't grow from something, there's no point in doing it.
I agree. Yeah, it's nice to sit and brainstorm and talk about certain things or techniques or whatever. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I see that too. And that's why I've kind of kept to myself for the most part. I've done a few workshops here and there, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it just seems to me that, are you in a it feels to me as though you're kind of in a similar thing. You're in a holding pattern. You're waiting for the next thing to present itself, and it hasn't quite done it yet.
Oh yeah, it seems like that. I've been teetering between worlds for a while now, in the illusion of, and yeah, it does feel that way to me for sure. Yep.
And it's really funny where usually I will do predictions for the whole year ahead of time and get them up on my website. I'm absolutely pulling teeth getting it month by month up there ahead of myself, because I have a feeling that there is something that hasn't been determined yet. And it's like things are still falling into place. It's like the tumblers are still locking into place.
Mm-hmm.
And a decision hasn't been made as to what direction, I don't know, humanity, the world is going to go in.
Makes sense, because it's in flux. That makes total sense. Yeah, I can understand that.
It's kind of like, not only that, but I have been accused and have been guilty of being Pollyanna-ish, always looking for the positive and stuff like that. And I'm finding that of late, what I'm getting, it isn't bad. It's all good. Energy is all good, but it feels as though it can't decide where to go.
That makes sense. Well, I see interference patterns everywhere. I mean, that's the biggest thing I'm seeing is just this. It's in flux, in the illusion of, in this false hologram, false matrix, whatever you want to call it. But also, Barbara, this is a sign insofar as how much work people have done spiritually. We're to a point where they understand the mechanics of consciousness, how to navigate through consciousness, and how to create a new template for this world. And what you're seeing is strife and conflict, and and sabotage, and divide and conquer concepts. Everything's going into chaotic mode, and this is why probably you're not getting a real good read insofar as what's going on, because it's all in flux. It's all not. It's just not stabilizing. It reminds me of something where they're trying to, like in Star Trek, where they have them and they're trying to teleport them somewhere, and it's just not. Something's not there to set.
Oh yeah, and they're caught in stasis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. A stasis is a perfect example of that. Yeah.
Well, what I find fascinating is that the status quo is no longer able to hold its matrix, and we're beginning to see a lot of the structures of control and manipulation that have been hidden for so long, and now they're so obvious. And what I'm finding fascinating is that things are so obvious and people aren't paying attention to them. They're pretending they don't see them.
Right. Yeah, all will be revealed, and it is now. It's hidden in plain sight, but now it's actually not even hidden anymore. Yeah, and it does have a lot to do with the savvy or the intellect or the spiritual evolution of people, because if they're not seeing what's going on and they don't have the logic to process this even on a multidimensional design, I don't know what to say to most of the people out there, because it's true, they're really not paying attention. They're too busy playing these video games and Pokemon, whatever the heck that thing is. These crazy things that they're doing to distract them. And one thing I've really noticed, Barbara, and I'm really glad that I was entered onto the timeline when I was, because it seems like the values and the morals of people have just deteriorated. The lack of compassion, and I try not to spin it in a negative, but I've seen so many people just being careless, lack of compassion for animals. It goes on and on and on. And you really see that behavioral pattern as a limitation in their own evolution. So that's a big concern. When I see the masses, like, you wonder what ratio how many people can get it to a point where we can really flip this and ascend it to the highest level and really break these false patterns. But then you look at the rest of the people and they seem so complacent and happy in their little worlds.
Yeah, we're coming up to the top of the hour, where of course we're going to have a break.
Okay.
And if I can stay together here so I can stay on, I wanted to get into something with the animals too, because the animal kingdom is so precious. And so now I have been called by people I love a cat lady. At one point I had 9 of them here at the house, 12 litter boxes, no waiting.
Wow.
Yeah, that's too many, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think that, and it's only my own personal belief system, and it has, and there is no expert ancient wisdom behind this. This is just me personally. I really feel that for someone, if someone doesn't like pets, like animals, or if someone doesn't have a pet, if they can, I think there's a part of their spirit missing.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm a big animal lover. I love all animals and life forms with animals. But yeah, it is. They're just so pure energy. They're so advanced. I always worry and concern myself with the animals and see so much abuse and harm that it just makes me so angry. I wish I could just go and pluck all these animals and take them to some place where they can be safe. But yeah, it's unfortunate if people don't reach out to the animal kingdom and embrace it with love, and it's just such a beautiful, beautiful energy.
Well, look what they're doing with convicted criminals. They're giving them dogs to train, and they're finding that kind of a synchronistic experience for them brings a kindness and a tenderness out in these hardened criminals that might not have come out in any other way. And it's they give unconditional love. Cats not so conditional, but
oh yeah, they let you live with them. That's the cat thing.
I'm afraid so. Yeah.
It is. That's how my cat is anyway.
Oh my God, I had a cat named Smudge that when he's still here. I mean, he passed away, but my cleaning lady sees him. Patrick saw him. Patrick didn't believe in ghosts, and I said, well, it's not really a ghost. It's Smudge, and he's still here. And Patrick just looked at me. But no, I do believe that their energy is so amazing. They are so healing. And the Chinese, Chinese, I think it's the Chinese. It may have been the Egyptians believed that the cats would pull heavy energy from people when they laid on their chests, and they absolutely do. And the purr is just one of the I think that should be the universal sound for peace, to be honest with you.
It really is nice. Well, they are temple kitties for a reason, and a lot of it has to do with protection. And of course, the psychic healing too. I used to have a cat that used to love to jump on my clients, and luckily my clients all liked cats, but whenever I do healing work on them, my cat would come in and he would want to help. And it was very interesting because he'd always know where to be on my clients, that he'd just plop on them and their legs or whatever. And, it's really interesting, but yeah, they do absorb a lot. They take in a lot. That's for darn sure. It's amazing.
Oh, when I do readings, I often have to read through a cat. Nice. Because, they just spread out on the spread, and it's like, people say, oh my God, it's okay. I'll read through her.
Isn't that funny?
Oh, yeah.
They're temple kitties. Yeah, whenever I do any circle work or anything, my cat is so onto it. My dog, he could care less. The cat, definitely. Yep.
No, they are, they're amazing. And it's to me, it's so phenomenal when people talk about being on a spiritual journey, and yet they don't understand that it's every day. So, Solaris, back to this. We were talking about cats. And I have to tell you, I have learned over time, I have a lot of people that come to the house for readings. And I have found that I learned years ago that if a person is in a good place within themselves, my cats want to sit on them, want to sit on the cars, want to lay around, and I usually wait, a good 10, 15 minutes before I actually start a reading to see just what the cat's reactions are going to be. And somebody asked me, she said, what's going on here? And because if the cats are not around, if the cats are gone, if they're under beds or whatever, I won't do the reading.
Wow.
And basically I tell them they're being cat scanned.
Very nice. Well, that's true. Yeah.
I made the mistake once of not paying attention to that and ended up with a migraine for 3 days.
Oh, wow.
Because the person was just so emotionally disturbed. She was crazy. And and to read somebody who's to try to give them good solid advice or whatever when they are totally just they're so erratic. I mean, it looked like there were lightning bolts coming out of her aura. She was just so frantic. It was unbelievable. And so I pay attention to my animals. If they are around, then I'll be fine, and I will do the reading. I have no problem. But if my cats are not present, or at least one of them, there's something wrong, and I will just say, geez, I'm overbooked, or I'm so sorry, we're going to have to reschedule, and I will reschedule the reading. I won't do it if my cats just and they just, what I love about them is they're, any animal is that they're so loving. They truly are, and they're drawn in by energy that is good and stable and mellow, and it's okay if somebody's upset, if they've been through a trauma, if they've lost a loved one. The cats are still there, and they're drawn to that kind of energy. But before the break, we were talking a lot about the fact that everybody is going through an ascension process, and it seems only fair. You and I think kind of forget that we're actually on a radio show and we just keep going. But
Mhm.
but you've given out some fabulous information in your book, and there are signs, there are ways of telling if you really are going through something like this. So let's give people some information that they can kind of grab onto and utilize, and let's hand some tidbits out for people too. I mean, they can always buy your book, which is on Amazon. It doesn't cost a fortune. It's Transmutation through Ascension, Soul of the Sun, SON. But how would somebody be able to identify whether they were psychic, whether they were going through an ascension process of some sort? How do people who haven't been, living this field like you and I have? I mean, I've been in this field for 50 years. You've been in this field for a gazillion years as well. So we're handing them about 100 years experience here. Let's give them some guidelines here.
Okay, well, with ascension, usually what happens is the DNA starts to activate through light body, through consciousness, through higher dimensional frequencies, multidimensional frequencies that descend onto the body. And what usually happens is also that the chakras start to really start awakening. And when that happens, when the crown chakra starts to get more accepting to the higher dimensional states of consciousness, people get sometimes they'll get a download, but also they'll get disorientation, and that can take on symptoms, pseudo symptoms. It can go from from the chakra systems. They can be out of balance. It can create a lot of imbalances. It can the solar plexus. It could be a third eye awakening where there's a lot of psychic vision all of a sudden that they're not able to process. They can have other things that are happening with the crown chakra where literally if they're getting a download, they could literally get more like very, very dizzy or spacey, because the higher dimensional frequencies that are descending down into the body are actually trying to stabilize and calibrate the body to go to a next level, to the higher levels of what we call ascension codes. So that's going to be another thing right there for them to look at. But it can take on all sorts of symptoms, from like stomach issues, survival issues. People will notice that they're going to have to peel away a lot of their emotional body because they'll feel like just naked wires insofar as things that'll start to awaken them. They'll get past life recall sometimes, or they'll be more psychic with people. They'll start to see energy. So it can take on a lot of formulas depending on, first of all, what's in their DNA to activate. But that's one of the key signatures as far as how are we evolving, or how do I know if I'm psychic, is literally you will know because you'll be able to see with your multidimensional sight. You'll start to get psychic awakenings with visions around people. Sometimes you'll see auras. Sometimes it'll be more of an energetic a vibration of some kind. But most of the time it gets interpolated correctly if you're processing the data with clarity. So I hope that covers it. I know it's probably not identical to what's in the book, but these are some other things that go on at the DNA level when we're being hit with what we call ascension energies. And it's really big, and this is why people need to let go of the false programs and the linear programming, because it doesn't serve you anymore. It does what it does on a timeline, and that's it. But this timeline is imploding in the illusion of we are imploding in the linear world. We're embracing multidimensional states of consciousness, and as expanded as that sounds, you just have to allow yourself to be, first of all, aligning the chakras and making sure that they're aligned so that they're able to bring in the energies from your crown, from the galactic, the full light universe down through your crown chakra, and really just stabilizing their pillar of light. And of course, that can be done through meditation, qigong, tai chi, walking. You don't have to be a total martial artist to be involved in just balancing these energies. But I strongly suggest that people do start working with their chakras and understanding that you need to unify these chakras. They can't just be one out of balance with the other. They have to be synced up. And that's the big part to light body that most people forget.
Well, now you've used that term a number of times, and I know a lot of people use that phrase, but how, and I think you and I have similar but not similar definitions of light body energy. So for you, what is the light body?
Well, the light body is really who we are as multidimensional beings. Once we become more and more divine through what we call, you want to call it the Shekinah, the divine presence, the Holy Spirit, the Christ light, that presence of you, that divine ascended master consciousness, when it fully starts to activate and integrate, it becomes more light. It becomes a light. Insofar as frequency, the dimensional spaces, the multidimensional spaces within the body change and start altering. And this is building up what we call a light body. It's a body that eventually morphs into what we call Merkaba, which is the vehicle of light. And when this happens, it's really just an expanded expanded design work and multidimensional design of who you are as an ascended master. It just, you become this awakened, expanded aura, completely activated from your crown to your feet and a multidimensional scale. It allows you to navigate through consciousness to a point where you're able to pierce beyond dimensional space. It really becomes more what we call avatar. But the light body is also what the Christ, the cosmic Christ, is associated with too, which is the body of light, which is the divine presence of who we are as ascended beings integrated into this suit. And when that happens, when you start downloading more and more of your ascended master consciousness, you're changing. Your DNA is changing. Your molecular structure is changing. Everything is changing in you to a point where you even become more light. You drop density. Your eyes shine. Your aura comes out more and more. You become this divine being, and that's what the light body is. It's really the transfiguration of the atom. It's done through frequency, through consciousness, through a lot of inner work, spiritual work, not religious, spiritual, going within the self and really diving in and understanding yourself and in your relationship to source, your relationship to the cosmic mind. And that's the way I see it. That's why I've always been, as co-creator of the universe, stepping up into what we call the galactic neighborhood, but stepping up into your ascended master consciousness. And it's always there. I mean, the ascended master, the pillar of light is always there. You just have to open it. You have to align the energy centers for it. But the only way to really activate light body is to have your chakras unified, to have done the spiritual work mentally, physically, spiritually, so that you're able to let go of any traumas, whether they're at the past life level or a childhood or a bad relationship, whatever it is. That needs to purge and clear. And with that comes more light. You'll feel lighter. Your vibratory rate will shift. You'll start feeling your body vibrating like a vril. You just literally become more electric. And that's part of the photon. A photon electric is what I call it. But yeah, so that's part of the process.
Yeah, and I think it's important for everybody to understand. We all have this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Not, everybody has it. And so it's a matter of, are you going to do the work to bring it into a higher resonance, a higher synchronicity to your consciousness? And that, the link between the consciousness and the higher consciousness is, you have to create a bridge to it, and you do that through trust and through faith and through work and through understanding that having all of you can have a library of all the holy books and all those spiritual books that are out there, but you can have read them all and memorized them all, but unless you're incorporating that material into your day-to-day life, because spiritual pathway is not something special. It isn't, a veer off. It is how you live your life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that you don't have to suddenly, put on a white sheet, go to the mountaintop and wait for the mothership. It's how you live your life, how you share your love, how you give unconditionally to people you don't know. I mean, I think the coolest thing ever is to be in the grocery store and see somebody who is usually I pick the elderly ones because they're more fun, but to be able to say something really nice to somebody who's there alone, telling them how pretty the color looks on them, or just to give them a smile. And you can see that there is a radiance that occurs when a compliment comes from out of nowhere to somebody, and it is such cool fun. I recommend everybody do it because it does come back at you. What you put out there comes back at you, and the more you realize that what you send out returns to you always, but not immediately. So there has to be an element of trust and letting go when you give a kindness, when you give love, when you give generosity. But I swear to you, I mean, I can give you experience after experience after experience after experience of the fact that when you let go of something unconditionally, it comes back at you, and it's so greatly magnified. It's just unbelievable. Mm-hmm. But people, and I've seen people say, well, I gave so-and-so and I didn't get anything back the next day, so I'm never doing that again. And, it's kind of like, you have to let it go. You have to, you can't give a gift and put conditions upon it. Then it's no longer a gift, it's a bribe.
Right. Well, then I always say there's an infinite checkbook out there too, and people don't seem to realize the universe is rich and abundant, and so are we really when we choose to be, and syncing up with those states of consciousness. But it is true, it's just being kind to each other, general compassion, and I think people have lost that edge of communicating because they're so busy staring at iPhones now. But it is really important to establish eye contact with people, to
Mm-hmm.
look at them from soul to soul, where you're actually being able to see them for who they are and what they are. I'm not saying everybody's all perfect because we have some strange ones out there, but I will say that there's some nice people, and I noticed that too. And a lot of these people, they're not awakened like I mean, they would never understand the conversation we're having tonight, but they're nice, wonderful, nice, pure souls. They're good people out there who just don't understand really what's happening. And I believe that, whatever level and state of consciousness they're at, they'll get home. I've always said this, we're walking each other home. We're heading home to our full light design work. We're still navigating. We're always going to be ascending. But to what degree we suffer is our choice because it depends on how our state of consciousness is from day to day, and also what we allow ourselves to get pulled into, which is unnecessary drama. And I must say that I'm not a drama queen, but man, can I get polarized with some of the crap that goes on in mainstream. So, I mean, because I'm a fierce warrior, I'm a spiritual warrior to some degree. So I have this stance in me that really stands bright and is very defiant because I know universal law and I understand very clearly that this control mechanism has to be broken down. We can't have this type of manipulation going on anymore here.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I'm seeing so coming to the fore of late is that the people's egos are just so out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the most amazing thing ever, and we all have egos. I mean, it's part of it. Comes as one of the given things in the human body, in the space suit, if you want to call it. It's one of the things that just it's in the package. You have an ego. You don't have to let it rule you. Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that people have to realize that every now and then everybody slips. If
Mm-hmm.
you were perfect, you wouldn't be here. Neither would I. I mean, if I was perfect, I wouldn't be here. We all have things that we're working on. And so we slip. We stand in judgment here or there or whatever. I mean, we do things that the ego takes us, what is it? The mouth is in motion before the head or heart has been consulted sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's
just,
cute.
there are times where I will rise to a challenge where I shouldn't, but I do it anyhow. And every now and then I say, well, I will pay for that one at some point in time, but it felt really good at the time.
Well, I always say, you want to transcend it to confidence and experience and leave the ego at the door. I used to say that when I had a grid running group that I used to do it once a month, and we would basically running light onto the world. But literally, I would tell everybody, leave your egos at the door, let it go,
Mm-hmm.
and just allow for your confidence, your higher self, and allow that pillar of light to be present. And I think that, I try to be the neutral witness for a lot of things. I try not to judge, but I do assess. I have this knack for being able to assess really well. And that's part of my profiling background. So I do have a tendency to do that. And it's not really about judgment, it's about assessment. But yeah, it can be misrepresented and misinterpreted. There's no doubt about that. But it is interesting. Yeah, there's a fierceness to me that just doesn't back down. There's no doubt about that. So I can only say that about me. And I'm sure that comes from multiple lifetimes of doing that kind of thing. So.
Well, and that's a good thing. I mean, that apparently was part of the program that you needed to have with you to survive this lifetime.
I think so. I really think so, because at some point, I really thought my life was going to be more bliss and more healing, and I was just going to do the light master surgery and write and do the DNA activation, and then I got pulled into that dark program, and all of a sudden this warrior spirit came out that was more like the ninja, in between worlds, and that presence, that being, had to be here, I think, to just really stay stable in what was happening, because we are in kind of a turbulent zone. It's it's more than a turbulent zone; it's a war zone to some degree. So yeah, you got to have that spiritual warrior activated within, or whatever you want to bring in as that powerful being.
Well, I think that is part of what makes you want to put information out there, and I think your books, do a beautiful job of that.
Okay.
And it's I mean, what you went through was not pleasant. It was in many ways it tore you apart and put you back together again. And what happened was you had the ability to, yes, get torn apart to a degree, but you put yourself back together again. You weren't put back together.
Very true. Yeah.
And in doing that, you created the person you are today. And the world would not be, humanity would not be whole without you. So there have to be people like you out there that will not really care. They will just, reach out, and they will fight for a cause. And, you probably, I would bet that you had had experiences where you probably were martyred for belief systems and things like that. And this time, happily, you didn't have to croak.
Right. Well, not yet. I'm too fierce. They're not going to take me down that easily.
No,
but yeah,
I would
I
think
agree.
not. But what you have written, does put material out there for people. It's for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. And I think that probably you're around in order to, put the voice out there. I once, sort of lamented that there had been cultures or species here on the Earth plane that had left their markers, the Giza Plateau and Belize and Machu Picchu and Puka Puka and the stone edifices that had stood the test of time, literally thousands and thousands of years, and probably more thousands than we actually know. But that spoke of a culture and a time. And my I was looking at what we are today as a society, and 10,000 years from now, there will be nothing left of who or what we are now. Nothing that we have built is lasting. Maybe Mount Rushmore, but and then it occurred to me that we are an electronic society at this point in time, and that everything that we have put out there on the airwaves is there for all of eternity. So that our words float out there, they can be picked up, they can be listened to 10,000 years, 100,000 years. I mean, they aren't going to dissipate. They're going to float out there for anyone who wants to tune into that they can. So we didn't have to leave monuments on the Earth plane. We've left frequencies on a cosmic plane, which is kind of even better.
That's a very good point you make right there. Yeah, it's interesting. And also when we do transfer into another dimensional space, it's interesting because that benchmark, that time capsule we left, I mean, that embodiment will be long gone, but the state of consciousness moves on. But as you were saying earlier, the personality that created that is no longer there. So it's almost like looking at another past life, and it's like looking at I don't know, it'd be interesting to perceive it after we leave this illusion of a planet and go, and to see where we've been on the benchmark of reviewing our experiences here. But it's been a journey.
Oh, for God's sakes, yes. But it's kind of funny when you stop and think about the fact that, okay, this is unique unto this particular place in space. And when this me passes into the next dimension, I'll be a whole nother person. And, hopefully I'll still have a sense of humor, because, that's one of the best tools that I've got, actually. So, you can't, I have trouble conceiving of myself being in a different vehicle and experiencing life in a different way. And, maybe that is a good thing, because if I had total recall of everything that I've done, I would probably be a lunatic right about now. But it is hard to embrace, but yet that's what it is. It's letting go of the paradigms that I grew up with and allowing a different paradigm to come in. And even though I've been in the field for a very long time, you struggle with that from time to time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's why I always say I teeter between worlds, because when I say that, I mean I'm teetering between dimensional spaces. I mean, there are times when I'm extremely off planet in in cosmic consciousness. And, I just finished a sci-fi book, which I literally have to release, but it's about being in alternate spaces of consciousness. And then you download into, or downgrade, I don't want to say downgrade, but go downshift, I guess is the word, into another reality where there's a little more coarse energy and density, but it's all about living multidimensionally and simultaneously. It's very interesting. But there are moments, Barbara, I look back and I remember the sacred moments of my life, and I'm sure you can relate. There were moments, even just like smelling the trees and the pine trees, or the snow and how quiet it is when it falls. I mean,
Hmm.
feeling nature. And I don't want to lose that, because to me that's very sacred. But I consider a lot of people don't pay attention to things like this. They forget the beauty of just the simplicity of life. And I think when I do leave this illusion of a planet, that's probably the main thing I would miss is that simplicity, that silence, that peace that comes from nature, that comes from the leaves, comes from the animals, the elements. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, a lot of people say, well, this is hell, and then other people say this is heaven, and I guess it is whatever you want to perceive it as. But yeah, I can totally relate to walking my dog at 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of a snowstorm, and no cars out, no nothing, just walking down the center of the road and realizing that my footprints were the only ones in the snow,
Isn't that neat?
and it was magical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can think of times when I have been one with nature, and it has been such an awesome experience. One year, my second husband was a sea captain, and he took a job on his off time as the captain of a 140-foot square rigger, and we took people out into the ocean on day trips. And when the engines were off and the wind filled those squares, you felt the power of spirit more deeply than it was always amazing to me. We would motor out into the Atlantic Ocean, and when we got far enough out, they would cut the engines and there would be a moment of silence, and suddenly everybody would stop talking and just feel the power of the wind catching, and that huge boat ship would suddenly be taken by the wind and surged forward. If you've never experienced something like that, everybody should try it once, because you feel very small, and then you feel a part of a greater whole that is just awesome.
It sounds beautiful. Yeah. Sacred moments. That's what I mean by just living the life that we're supposed to live. In my opinion, anyway, it is really supposed to be about tuning into all of these beautiful, beautiful dimensional spaces and frequencies and elements and nature and the cosmic design behind it all. I don't want people to forget this, but I think sometimes they do. And I guess that's one of the reasons I put my books out, was to, first of all, activate people on a higher level of spirituality with the transmutation through ascension, but also awaken them to the fact that there are some covert technologies out there that could distort and create things that would detract from where they're supposed to be in their state of consciousness. So it's an interesting little world we live in, and I guess it's not so little anymore. But yeah, it's very interesting. What they say in the Chinese, these will be interesting times.
Yeah, well, they certainly have begun to be. It's almost like you look at the whole planet, and it feels to me as though there is a rumbling going on, and I keep looking at the Ring of Fire, and for those of you who don't know what the Ring of Fire is, it's a ring of volcanoes and earthquakes and stuff it's in the Pacific Ocean, and it basically is a ring. And earthquakes and volcanoes and things like that have been erupting far more frequently than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this may be a pattern that has happened over time, and it may be a pattern that goes back 10,000 years or so. It could be a repeat of a pattern that's ancient, and yet because our years are so few, we don't recognize the pattern. but it just seems to me as though the planet is getting ready to shift.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And of course, history's been distorted, so you really can't use a lot of that information as a benchmark. That's part of it. But, I always look it's ebb and flow once again, and you can look at the man's technology to maybe kind of prematurely do damage to a lot of things that are happening right now. But then you can also say, well, this planet's ready to shift and it's doing its thing. And then, of course, mankind's activities and his behavioral patterns are almost spiking up on behalf of this shift that's happening. So once again, it is about the light descending onto this world and how people are able to hold that vibration. And a lot of the time, people can't hold higher dimensional states of consciousness or that pure energy. They have to detoxify. And of course, some people are doing it through more violence and just craziness. They don't want to let go of their paradigm. So I think you're right, though. There are some major changes happening here. It's been rumbling for a while now. We've got some interesting anomalies that are starting to surface. And, I believe that everything is just morphing and morphing to a point where, a lot can happen within the next 2 years. And I don't know, I don't like to ask you about predictions, but, a lot of people are anticipating something coming in around 2018 or maybe in the next 2 years from the outside. I don't know if you have any insight on that, but that's very interesting, too. So something exterior coming in from more like the galactic center.
I would probably say I'd agree with that. What I'm seeing initially is that things like I keep talking about the New Madrid fault line, mm-hmm. and it feels like that's going to go again. And the more I watch it, the more I am sure that it is. I even believe the government thinks it is because all the school systems that are along that fault line have disaster kits for each student with 3 days water, 3 days food in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that the government is aware that something is happening there. I do believe that our I think technology is what's really holding us back spiritually, to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I can validate that. There's no doubt about it. Well, it's detracting from people using their natural creativity and brainwaves. I used to, like the old days, I used to type on a typewriter. And I never really had a computer until later on. It was like late in the 90s, I think, or whenever. I didn't have a lot of technology around me, and I liked that. And then, of course, after I got, interfaced with artificial intelligence, and that's another animal, then I realized how sacred spirit is. It's just, you don't want anything that's going to deter your beautiful soul and spirit into this world of black box technologies. And it's all virtual feeds. The thing is, it's all an illusion. There's nothing substantial about it. It's not part of spirit. It's not part of source. It's just an in-person. It's almost like an imposter program. It's a simulation of living. And that's the problem I have. And I think people are almost living in a simulation right now. They're not taking anything seriously, and they're becoming desensitized from the natural energetics of the world and the natural energetics of the cosmos. It's kind of sad to see that. And maybe it takes an earth change to make, wake them up.
Well, actually, I would absolutely agree with you, and especially since things like the earthquake in Haiti, and we'll look at Katrina. It's these catastrophic things are happening, and they become just sound bites on the evening news. And the people they aren't fully recovered from Katrina yet, or Sandy, or and especially the stuff in Haiti that was awful. But it seems to me that our what's the word I'm looking for? That our ability to concentrate and focus on something is just, it's like 10 minutes, and then the consciousness is gone onto something else, instead of focusing on places where there are needs that you have to take care of. It's like, okay, so what's the next disaster? And then the previous disaster is just left hanging and not dealt with. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, I cannot believe that as a species we are meant to be that way. We have always been, we have always cared for your family. Come on, barn raisings. We used to help each other as a community, and the community is gone.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's interesting because when you mentioned that attention span thing. To me, what comes to mind is it's an interruption in the flow of consciousness, and consciousness defines reality. So if these people are constantly getting distracted or interrupted, well, you're not able to manifest from day to day. You're not able to focus on source or your higher self, or to create and manifest what you wish to establish from day to day, or even sync up with the rest of the collective, because they're all fragmented and focused on other things. That's the part I think I'm seeing more and more, is the fragmentation of consciousness. In other words, it's just becoming chaotic. And this is why when you were talking about predictions and things, the flux is what I'm seeing. The flux, it's not stable. There's nothing, it's just in between spaces. There's nothing stable here right now, unless we are the stable. We are the light. We are the beacons of light that emanate. But I agree. I think community is really important. The one thing I did see when I had the fire up here was a community really getting together, and people just started really, really connecting, and that was a nice thing to see.
Well, give us a real good disaster, and we're great for a time frame. Look at what happened with 9/11 too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, it was amazing how people just chipped in and people helped other people out, and they weren't judgmental, and they were just helping. Mm-hmm. And if we could get back to that, it would be really, really nice. When I was doing the overview for this year, I had something unusual happen. Usually I do the overview first and then I fill the months in as we go. And I stopped and started maybe a good dozen times, because it came through differently this year than it ever has before. And I started, I would go into it and I would hear marching feet, drums, and fifes. And when I finally said, all right, let me just see what I'm seeing here, and I went back to the Revolutionary War, and it was so strange. I kept hearing, those who don't pay attention to history are forced to repeat it, and I realized that today we have put ourselves back exactly in the same position the colonists were in the 1700s. Mm-hmm. We're fighting against not a king, but a global corporation. We are being taxed out of sight. We aren't even being looked upon as, they were, they were not looked upon as English citizens. They were looked upon as colonists. So they weren't even identified as, whole people, so to speak. And that's where we are today. The middle class is gone. And to me, it was like, all right, so if the situation is the same, is the resolution going to be the same? Is there going to be a war? Or is there, and of course we are at war to a certain degree, but I'm talking about, internally, and I think that there can be a war of words, there can be a war of philosophies. It doesn't have to be guns and stuff like that, but it feels like it's important for at least this country to recommit to a foundation that will serve the civil, the Americans as a whole. And I'm not sure the government at this point in time does that. So I don't know what kind of upheaval I saw, but I saw upheaval.
You're right. Well, I see a war coming. I've talked about this often. I don't want to see it coming. I'd like to see everybody just phase shifting to higher levels of consciousness, and we having more of a utopia free energy society. And I think at some point in the continuum that will happen. But I always call it the New Earth Star, because it's right now they're deliberately trying to sabotage Ascension, and they're doing it through creating conflict on the timeline. That will keep everybody busy and sucked into the drama to a point where they're not able to manifest and tune into the higher dimensional frequencies. But it's still not going to kill out Ascension, because Ascension is a universal law and given. But I will say, if people want to hold on to freedom and they want to be fortified in our beliefs, our beliefs are expanded in consciousness. What I talk about, most worlds don't understand. Most countries really don't get it. And some people will murder you for it. We don't want to go back into the dark ages. So it is a very defining point now on the timeline, in my opinion, that we have to stand up and fight. And if that means going down to a revolution, that could be possible. Because what I'm seeing is so much chaos right now and so much craziness that, we can bury our heads in the sands and we can do mantras and we can pray and pray and pray. And yes, that helps and that changes reality. But when push comes to shove and we start seeing things happening in our country I think we're going to have to make a choice. And, those of us who are like, I'm so used to going in and out of multiverses and worlds, it doesn't bother me to be, I could stay here today and leave tomorrow and I'd be okay with that. I love being in the illusion of space, I guess, but you know what I mean? It's just, I'm not intimidated by the illusion of death. In other words, some people would have a harder time with that. So I would say, I think we are heading towards a revolution. I think we're teetering in that direction.
Well, look what happened back in I don't know, the 1800s. Tesla energy would have given us free energy.
Yep. And they basically took it and now it's weaponized.
Yeah. And it just, but they could go back to it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think Tesla did something here on this illusion of a planet before he left that he didn't tell anybody about. I really believe that something's going to happen at some point where this planet's going to light up, but I can't explain it. But I do think he left something behind that they don't have access to. That's just my own take.
I would tend to agree. He was brilliant. And brilliance is not appreciated, it's condemned. And so you get anybody that has an invention that my father was in the FBI during World War II, and he was at a demonstration, and it was out on Long Island, and they brought brand new cars with they'd never been run. They were they filled the gas tanks with water, with just plain water, hose water, salt water, any kind of water. And they put a little white pill into the tank, waited a couple of minutes, and the car ran on the water.
Awesome.
Government bought the patent, and you've never seen it.
It's a shame, isn't it?
I mean, there is such brilliance in the society here, and it's well, look at what was it, the windshield wiper on the car. I mean, that man lost he sold it or whatever, but he created something that was magical that helped, and somebody bought it and made a profit off of it. I mean, when you have people out there that are so brilliant, that are so amazing, that can really create things that will help the population. And we have people in this country that are homeless and that are hungry, and there's no reason for that.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's a shame, and it needs to change. And that's the thing. There's so much greed involved. And what's amazing is a lot of these, these cabals and these organizations that have confiscated all of these patents and this information, they weren't the brilliant minds. They just stole the data. That's all they've been doing, is stealing data and hoarding it for their own control purposes. But, we could change the world overnight, Barbara. We could really change it overnight for the better. And that's the vision I've always held for this world. And you're right, nobody should go hungry globally. Nobody should be suffering. There should be no illness, technically speaking. And we've had technologies like Rife and other technologies that could literally assist in healing people. There's no reason for people to suffer. There really isn't, or animals or anybody else.
Well, when you look at especially the medical industry, I mean, I do believe that they have a cure for cancer. They've had it for years.
I totally agree with you. Yep.
And because it is against their betterment, it's against their checkbooks, to have it cured, people keep dying of it, and it boggles my mind that humanity seems to be forgotten in the pursuit of money and power.
Absolutely. And what they're forgetting is that, inside, as we talk about the suit, this little space that we operate and function in, we are divine beings. We are an extension of the cosmos. Nobody's just a little, we're real beings. We're life forms here. And that's what people have seemed to have forgotten along the way, especially these people in these dark agencies, cabals, whatever you want to call them. They literally don't understand the soul and the spiritual evolution of the soul. I do believe some of them are very, very jealous of that, the ascension process or the capabilities of being an immortal being, because we are immortal. I mean, we're immortal beings, we're immortal souls, and we'll keep continuing on and we'll keep ascending. But what we don't want to do is polarize with all this evil, because there's no place for it in the cosmos, in my opinion. I mean, I like bliss myself. I choose to be in the blissful states. Unfortunately, we're on this the war zone again, but I think it's changing. I really do believe this is the last time we'll have to deal with this kind of conflict. That's my take anyway. I believe this is it. This is the end game, and that it really is about, really, really being sharp and also being that beacon and pillar of light.
Well, I totally agree, but it's to me, okay, so if we look upon, these multi-levels and everything and these dimensions, when we pass over, we pass into another dimension, another level of consciousness, another way of expressing and growing. It's sort of like we are on a journey that is never ending, yet it's constantly complete at the same time.
Yeah, it's infinite. There's no doubt. And what I also see is that, with the conflict, if you keep your vibratory rate higher, as we all know, when you transfer out, you go to a higher dimensional space. In other words, it'll be like a glass, like a wall of glass, where you'll see, maybe you'll be able to observe conflict and war on one dimensional space, but you'll be in a higher vibration. So you won't be able to participate with that, but you'll be able to observe it. I think that happens also. So this is what I mean by really keeping your energy fields, try to keep them calibrated to higher dimensional states of consciousness by raising your frequency. And I know it's hard to do right now because they've tried so much. They've tried to use technological, so many different technologies to literally run interference. But I know we can rise above it.
Oh, I totally agree. And the thing is, the people that are now waking up, that are starting that journey towards their own levels of self-awareness. I mean, they truly are genuinely recognizing the fact that illusion has been has kept them back from becoming as complete a person as they can possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's letting go of the illusions. This lifetime, this present lifetime for all of us may just be an exercise in identifying illusion and passing through that mirror, passing through the illusion into a greater reality within ourselves.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, I believe it's about mastering consciousness, and that's all part of it. And also, the more we ascend, the more we receive soul ascension energies, what we call ascension energies, the more we can see through the matrix. We can see through the false matrix, and we can decode. The reason that we are able to do what we're doing, you and I and beings like us, is because we are advanced in our psyche. And I say this with no arrogance. We're able to decode what's going on here. We can see the lies. We can see the deception. We know what needs to be changed. That comes from a full light benchmark. That comes from our higher self, multidimensional design work. So people can access that. What I do see are people, I want them to be empowered. My whole life, I'm always about, I taught martial arts. I like to empower people. I don't want to disempower them. And the best way to empower them, well, your show is one way to do that. Be the voice, be out there teaching as the teacher's teacher, but putting books out, put information out. Do what you can to empower them. But they have to also, like you were saying, not just read. They have to act. They have to get up and do it. It's like I earned my black belt. You can't sit there and watch a TV show and pretend you're a martial artist. You got to get in there and you got to train. You got to hurt. You got to you got to sweat, all these other things to achieve what you want to achieve, just like anything else, and work what we call, our muscles, even with our psychic ability. You practice, you learn, you just do it, and it evolves and it grows. And I think that's what people need to realize. It's about self-empowerment, and they can get themselves out of this, but they have to be self-empowered to do it.
Oh, absolutely. And there are, again, also I totally agree with everything you said. But on top of that, there are different levels. There's the aspect of, are you going to be a technician or an artist? Are you going to practice something, and repeat it over and over again? Or are you going to allow yourself to become the artist and take those tools and create even greater things with it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And if you've listened to, I especially identify it with musicians. You can tell who is technically accurate, but there's no life to it. There's no spirit to it. And then you can hear people play a piece of music where their soul is in every note.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. That's just it. Let the soul breathe, let the soul be creative. And I kind of wondered, and I've always talked about this too, that some of us really do have a soul embodiment, and we're a benchmark in the cosmos of where our soul's origin has come from, our spirit. And some, I believe, are sometimes entities. I don't even know if they have souls. I've looked at a lot of what I call disembodied units here who appear to not have a soul force, who don't appear to have a real spirit. So that's something I look at also.
Yeah, there are those people out there, and it is kind of weird. It's sort of like they have the vehicle, but there's nothing in, the lights are on, but nobody's home.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like it's been, what did they call it? It's just some kind of an electronic entity or something. I don't know what it is, to be honest with you, but there's nothing there. And whatever it is, it's not connected to what I call the full light universe. It's not connected to the cosmic design. It's not, its origin is not from soul or spirit or the evolution of consciousness. So that it could be a species thing too. It could be different species here because, as you and I probably, I'm sure you realize that the suit is the suit, but we're species in this suit too. There's a different
Yeah.
life here from other origins and other parts. So different galaxies and things like that. But that gets more into the esoteric galactic world.
I mean, you can also look at it, okay, so that we are a spirit in an avatar. I mean, is this our spirit's vacation? Is this
I can pick a better place than this, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I'd like to say I'm just here for the pizza, the animals.
Yeah, I could go along with those two things. No, it's such an amazing trip. It's so exciting and it's so vital and there is so much magic out there, and people just, if they can just start recognizing the magic, their lives will be transformed.
I agree. And that's the whole thing. I don't want to see magic snuffed out, by all this control that's going on right now. I never want to see that beauty, that illumination just get blown away by all of these cabals or corporate agendas or anything else. And I tend to think that they try to do that to some degree, or at least control it. So,
well, I have a sign in my garden and it says, to those who don't believe in magic will never find it.
Absolutely.
And as children, we believed in magic, and fireflies and shooting stars were just absolutely awesome. And to not remember those times, and I mean, how many of us actually, I mean, I go out and look for shooting stars on a pretty regular basis. I spend time staring at the stars.
Nice.
And not many people do that. Not many people stop and smell the roses anymore. And it's so amazing to have those experiences. And our children today, I have 2 grandchildren. They are so scheduled, it's unbelievable. They don't have the time to have that kind of magic happen in their lives. And that's a sad thing.
It really is a sad thing. And those are the moments that we were talking about earlier that I appreciate so much, is just magic in general. Just that whole magical moment of just being in tune with what's here. And as we all say, we're not going to come back. At this point in time, you and I, what we're having right now, it'll never happen again the same way. And it's really important to understand that, appreciating every moment, every single moment we have while we're here, to appreciate it, because it's not going to be the same ever again.
No, and in that thought, I have to tell you, I so appreciate your coming on the show. You are such a delight to talk to and to pump for information.
Well, likewise, it's been an honor for me to communicate with you too, and I'll have to have you back on my show as well, because I just adore you. I just love you. I think you're wonderful, and you're a teacher's teacher, Barbara, and that's what I love about you, is you have so much to bring here, and I hope you write your book. Get it rolling.
Me too.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely in me, and there are a couple of them, and I think at some point in time I will get to the point where I just say, okay, this is the year that I just write everything, and I think probably starting 3 or 4 of them at the same time is probably the way that I'm going to have to go, so I can just kind of hopscotch between them and keep myself interested in everything, because there's just so much to learn, and happily, time is relative, so that or it doesn't exist at all. And at 72, I keep thinking, well, how many years do I have? As many as I need.
That's right. Thank you again. I loved it. It's great.
Thank you so much for being here. I truly am so grateful that you're around.
Likewise.